The engine idled outside my gate while boxes thudded onto the pavement. My mother-in-law smiled like this had always been the plan. My father-in-law counted steps to the door as if measuring ownership. And my husband stood behind them, arms crossed, eyes already hardened. "We'll live together," she said. "Thanks for taking care of us." I laughed once. It came out wrong. I asked if there was some misunderstanding. He answered for them. "If you're against it, leave." That was the moment the house went quiet. Even the engine shut off. I remember thinking how neat betrayal looks when it finally stops pretending. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I stepped aside and let them carry their future into my present. Inside my chest, something locked into place. I used to believe love was built from patience, from compromises that feel small at the time, from trust that grows like a shared language. When I met him, he was gentle. He listened. He made promises in a voice that sounded steady because it was practiced. We built this house together, or so I thought. I paid the down payment. I signed the loan. He said he would handle the rest. He handled appearances, dinners, compliments in public, silence at home. His parents visited often. They measured me with their eyes. They spoke about tradition like it was law. I told myself love could bridge that gap. I told myself patience was strength. The changes came quietly. He stopped discussing finances. He started taking calls outside. His mother began talking about our house as if language alone could move deeds. I noticed the mail first. Bank letters redirected. Statements I never saw. One night, his phone lit up on the table. A message preview slid across the screen. Not an affair. Worse, coordination. Move-in date confirmed. She won't resist. If she does, remind her whose house it is. I memorized the words. I put the phone back exactly where it was. I washed the dishes. I slept. Control is a skill you learn when reacting costs too much. The next weeks were about confirmation, not confrontation. I requested copies of documents under the excuse of refinancing. I found signatures that were not mine. Powers of attorney drafted with my name misspelled just enough to look like a mistake. Accounts opened in his mother's name, funded by our joint savings. I felt the hurt. I just refused to show it. Planning became my second language. I spoke to a lawyer in a cafe across town where no one knew me. I brought copies, dates, messages. I learned which moves were loud and which were fatal. I did not threaten. I prepared. I opened a separate account. I redirected my salary. I documented every box they carried into my home. I photographed serial numbers. I kept receipts. I scheduled a financial audit under the pretense of tax planning. I filed a quiet complaint about forged signatures. I waited. The night they arrived with the truck, I smiled and made tea. I showed them rooms. I listened as my husband explained the rules. His rules. His mother's rules. I nodded. Inside, the clock started. 3 days later, the audit flagged irregularities. A week after that, the bank froze accounts pending investigation. 2 weeks later, a registered letter arrived. Not to him, to me. The sole borrower. The sole owner. They were eating dinner when the doorbell rang. A courier. Another letter. Then another knock. This time, 2 officers, polite, precise. I watched their faces change as names were read. Aloud. Forgery. Fraud. Misrepresentation. Temporary. Occupancy without consent. My husband looked at me like I had swapped bodies. His mother began to speak and stopped when she realized no one was listening. "Isn't there some misunderstanding?" he asked. He used my words. I handed him the phone, the messages, the dates, the signatures magnified and circled. The plan he thought was invisible now printed in black and white. The officers asked who owned the house. I answered, calm, clear. They asked who authorized the move. Silence. The trembling started then. Not dramatic, subtle, a hand on a chair. A breath caught too late. My father-in-law sat down as if gravity had increased. I did not gloat. Revenge is cleanest when it looks like procedure. They were given time to pack essentials. The truck was no longer welcome. The locks were scheduled to change that evening. My husband tried to argue. He tried to bargain. He tried to remind me of vows. I reminded him of signatures. When they left, the house breathed again. It sounded like relief. The divorce papers followed. Efficient. Uncontested. Once evidence entered the room, he moved into a rental paid for by family who suddenly had very little to offer. His parents stopped calling. Silence has a way of teaching respect. Weeks later, I walked through my home. My home, The rooms felt larger, the air lighter. I did not feel victorious. I felt accurate. Betrayal wants chaos. It feeds on emotion. I starved it. I chose order. I chose timing. I chose myself. People ask how I stayed calm. I tell them the truth. I was angry. I just learned to aim. Justice does not always shout. Sometimes it waits by the door, paperwork in hand, and lets the guilty walk themselves out.